I'd like to officially welcome Stefanie London to the Fresh Fiction Virtual Book Club tonight. Thanks for joining us, Stefanie.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, and again, thanks for joining us right before the Thanksgiving holidays here in the States. I mean, but it's not really a big holiday for you, right? Because you live up in Canada.
Yeah, so we actually have already had our Thanksgiving a month ago. So I'm just waiting for Black Friday sales at
Oh,
this point.
see, that part is universal, right? We
Yeah,
all are
that
looking out for those
everyone
big
gets that.
sales. Well, Stephanie, let's kick this off and tell us a little bit about yourself, other than that you live in Canada, and how did you get started writing?
Yeah, so I'm Stephanie. I was born and raised in Melbourne, Australia, which you can probably tell from the accent, but I've been living in Toronto for the last, I think we're at 9 years now. So still not quite acclimatized to just how cold it is here, but I do love the city of Toronto and being close to the US so that I can do lots of events like these when they're not in the middle of the night. So that's really good. And I've been a wannabe writer ever since I was a little kid. I was that cliche kid in class that whenever we did a readathon, the teacher would just immediately give me extra sheets to log all of the books that she knew I was going to read. And I read all of my English books before the semester started. And I have a business degree that is basically mostly English lit subjects that I crammed into any elective that I was allowed to pick.
I love how
And
you put that in quotes as you're
yeah,
talking about it.
business degree, super serious. Yeah, it's basically I wanted to do an arts degree and my dad kind of kiboshed that. So I got the next best thing that I could get. And I've been published. Next year will be 10 years. So yeah, I've been doing this for a while and been writing rom-coms, and then recently I've transitioned into writing some cozy mysteries and thrillers. And I just love books, love reading, love writing, love everything fictional. So I'm very happy girl because this is the best job in the world.
Well, what was it that really convinced you to make that transition from the business degree? And you were mostly in corporate America, right? Doing HR work.
Yeah.
What was that transitioning from there into actually sitting down and writing your first manuscript?
Yeah, it was. So when I got married in 2012, and on my honeymoon, my sister gave me a copy of 50 Shades of Grey because that's what you should take on your honeymoon. And when I was there, I was like, we were in a resort in Fiji, and I was reading a ton of books. And down at the marina, they had a beautiful little like a news agency, and they had all of these Harlequin category books in there. And I just one day was in there browsing and just looking at all of the lovely like painted covers. They had some like really old ones there. And I was like, oh, well, I finished all the books that I took with me because that's what I do on holidays. And I just bought a stack of these books and started reading them. And I was like, oh my God, these are great. How have I never read these books before? And then when I came home, I'd been, thinking about wanting to write for a while. And my mum was like, you should just go for it. Like, what have you got to lose? You've always been good at English and, you love books. So just like give it a go. And I literally ended up selling the first thing I ever wrote. So my transition from being unpublished to published was super quick and unusual. And then I just kind of ended up, when we moved to Canada, I quit the corporate world. I was working in human resources and change management and was not very happy. It was a very uncreative kind of job. And it was sort of, well paying, but I didn't feel very fulfilled. And so when we moved over here, I actually went back to my previous career, which was working as a makeup artist, working at a Mac counter and then writing on the side. And as my career started to take off, eventually I let the makeup work go and just sort of transitioned that way. But I think moving to Canada and like having to quit my job anyway definitely kind of sped things up.
Well, what is it like now that you're because you're writing full time?
Yeah.
And with that being your job, how do you refill that your creative inspiration then? Because now that that's your full-time position, as opposed to where it was kind of, oh, this is what I'm doing more as a hobby and an outlet, how do you balance that now that you've made that switch?
That's a really good question because I think that that's something that a lot of people don't consider when they make the leap into turning their hobby into a job. And I have to say, I actually went through, I'm like naturally a very hardworking, I like work, I like to be busy. But I did actually go through a phase where I kind of didn't know what to do with myself in my spare time, because all I ever did in my spare time was write. But now I was doing that for work. So I just kept working more. And my husband was the one that said to me, like, you needed to find some balance with this and find something else to kind of be the creative thing on the side that gets you, you know, your brain out of work. Because for me, I actually need space from the manuscript to let the story percolate. And so it makes me a better writer to have that time away from the computer and away from the story. So I just took up a bunch of other creative hobbies. I knit, I love to bake, I play video games, I play Dungeons and Dragons with my sister and her husband, and I have a lot of other sort of like creative outlets. And I just find that, yeah, having space for those things in my life actually makes me a better writer, because it gives my brain time to like let everything settle after a day of writing. And then when I come back the next day, I actually have more to say because I've given myself that time.
So it's like your brain is just kind of percolating all those different ideas while
Yeah.
you're technically focused on something else.
Yeah, it's kind of wild. I actually do my best work in the shower. So like at the end of the day when I'm like washing my hair, and I'll be like, oh, that's how I'm going to solve that prize. Something about being in the shower solves all of my plot problems.
I have to agree. I mean, when you're working on a paper or a presentation or something, or like you said, you've got some kind of problem that you're trying to work out. I swear, you get in the shower, set the hot water, and you're just like, okay,
Yeah.
this now I know what to do. Okay.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like, okay, I wish there was a way for me to better take notes, because I'm not going to keep a whiteboard or something like that.
No.
Like, okay, I got to remember this now.
I have dashed out of the shower, like still wet, trying to type things on my phone just to like get it out of my head.
You've got to be able to capture those ideas when they come. I mean,
Mhm.
and so where do you typically find the inspiration behind your stories?
Oh, they come from all over. Every book is a little bit different. Sometimes it's an article that I've read. Sometimes it's something I've seen on TV that sparks an idea. So the original idea for this series, the first book, the Dasham Wears Prada, actually was partially sparked by an episode of Sex and the City where Carrie is at a book signing and she gets like downgraded to this, like, to be the second speaker behind this dog who has a book. And I just found that so hilarious that I was like, oh yeah, what if like a human was an assistant to a dog? And then it kind of like sparked the whole concept for the first book. And originally, when I pitched it to my agent, that was just one book in a series about something else. And my agent was the one who said, no, this dog thing, like that's the idea. That's the big thing here. We've got to focus on that. Can you come up with some more story ideas in this vein? And that's kind of how the series was born, that she kind of found that little nugget in what I gave her.
Well, we are always a sucker for dogs and other animals in the books. So as you're writing these, I mean, for each of the books in the Paws in the City series, I mean, each dog also, I mean, in addition to your main characters, obviously, but the dogs themselves have their own characteristics and personalities. So how much fun is that, trying to imbue all these different elements with the dogs and different scenarios with the dogs, in addition
Oh,
to your actual main love story?
so much fun because I've always grown up with dogs. My mom, speaking of diva dogs, has two chihuahuas, and God bless them, but yeah, they're a little high maintenance, and I love those dogs to death. But I've always been that person that's like, I'll like make up what the dog's like saying when they're doing something funny, or I'll give them like a little voice. And my family always just found that so amusing. And so that came really naturally when I was writing the first book. But I also wanted to challenge myself to give the dogs like their own character arc and their own relationship arc with the humans, which was great when I did the first book. And then my editor was like, I love this so much, you have to do it in every book. And then I was like, oh no, what have I done? Then I had to do it 2 more times, and it was quite challenging managing the human relationship arcs and the dog's arcs and the dog's voice and the human's voice. Yeah, it was a lot, but it made writing this series really challenging and really fun.
So what did you do to keep all that stuff straight? I mean, do you keep essentially like a book Bible as you're putting things together? Or is it a series of post-its, or is it all just, I mean, that just is so much stuff to keep coordinated.
Yeah, I probably should keep track of it, huh? I don't know. No, I don't. I have a really organic writing style in that I know what I should do with the planning and figuring stuff out in advance, but it's just not how my brain works. And I just have a very, very loud, busy brain when I'm in the middle of a book because it's all just kind of buzzing around in there. And yeah, my agent knows at this point that at best my synopsis is a rough guideline of what the book will be, and she might receive something totally different. But I just have to kind of like, I feel it as I write, and that's just how it comes. And I control F a lot to figure out, oh, wait, what was that person's name again?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So do you then have to go back and restructure things?
Sometimes, I mean, I find actually in because I've written quite a lot of books now that it was the books where I tried to force myself to plan that actually ended up having the most editing is because I was often going against my instinct while I was writing. So, I mean, all like pretty much all books have some level of revisions. But some of them, the ones that I feel really strongly about, tend to be the ones that, like the Dachshund Wears Prada, was very minimal revisions. Like that book just poured out of me. And when my editor read it, she's like, you know, tweak this, but bump this thing up, and then we're good to go. And it's just, you know, I know some books just come out like that. But yeah, when I've tried to force myself in the past to really like use planning cards and fill out for it, just, I don't know, it just doesn't work for me. I kind of get bored and then I don't want to write the book, and I stop listening to that little thing inside me, which is usually what steers me in the right direction.
Well, I want to also go back to when you said that you had discovered all the different Harlequin books in Fiji, or not Fiji, Fuji. Wait, Fiji. Yes.
Yes,
Gosh,
Fiji, yeah.
my brain. But when you found all these Harlequins when you were in Fiji, and if I remember from some of my research that you also started reading, we're kind of the same generation growing up on the Sweet Valley High books and BC Andrews. How much do you think all of those types of books influence your writing today? Or what was it about those that really grabbed your interest as a reader and then transition into a writer?
I think so. My sister made a really interesting comment to me one time when I was sort of like early on. So initially, I actually always thought I would write mystery novels, and I'm starting to do that now. It's a genre that I really love and I've loved for a long time. But when I discovered the Harlequin category books, I was sort of struck by how they were about people becoming better versions of themselves. And I didn't think that that's what romance novels were about. I thought that was about people falling in love, which they are. But it's sort of like the thing I learned, and what my sister said to me later on, she's like, there's stories about people and their lives. And I'm like, yeah, I know, it's so simple, but I didn't think that's what it was. And you know, I always like to think of myself as a bit of a frustrated psychologist. I'm fascinated by why people do things and how relationships evolve and, you know, how we change. I'm very into like self-development and, you know, wanting to, you know, increase self-awareness and understand myself better and
I
improve.
hear that HR background
Oh,
there.
I know. It's totally what drew me to that in the corporate world as well. And I was a training facilitator for us. I love that, like sharing knowledge and, you know, improvement and stuff. And yeah, when I discovered that that's really what romance novels were about, I was like, oh, I thought I'd discovered this like absolute hidden gem. And then I find out that lots of people know about romance novels and that's why they love it. But it was a really big moment for me. And so it's been a focus in my writing as well to really hone in on why the relationship makes these people better than they were before, not just why they fall in love.
With that, then what is the appeal to branch out into the cozy mysteries? Because you're writing those under the name Emily George, right?
Yes, that's correct. And I think it's almost like a similar type of thing. What I like about cozies is that it's always this like plucky character who's got tons of flaws and just keeps pushing on in spite of those things. I love that, like that battle to get over adversity. Something about that I find really satisfying. And I think that in cozies, it often comes a bit more from like an intellectual, like a thought process place. And in romance, it's often a bit more of an emotional thing. But I like that they often feature characters who, yeah, battling through adversity and are just trying to like make the world a better place.
With all of your other creative outlets, are you still as much of a reader?
Yeah, I am. I mean, I definitely have phases where my head is so full of a particular book that I can find it a little bit hard to unwind if something feels like work. And sometimes reading does feel like work. That's a thing I have struggled with um, over like the course of my career. And I often I'll be honest, sometimes now I do struggle to read romance because I've been writing it for so long that it's hard not to go into editing mode when I pick
That's what
up.
I was going to ask. I mean, when you're reading for enjoyment, do you find that you're then kind of reading, I don't know, strategically on things and start analyzing
Yep.
more than actually appreciating the story itself?
Totally. And I mean, sometimes that's a good thing because sometimes I'll be like, oh, wow, the way they did XYZ with the conflict was so nuanced and cool. I'd like to do that in one of my books. Sometimes it can be an inspiration thing, but I do find that, yeah, it does make me it makes it hard for me to get into the story because I'm often so focused on I wonder if that was something that was changed in revisions. And I can kind of spot little things where it's like I can feel the editing in the writing. And that does make it a bit hard to kind of unwind and enjoy things. So often I find really the best solution for that is to read stuff that's a bit outside of what I write.
Hmm,
Yeah.
okay. And I'm guessing that might also be some of the appeal of like the Dungeons and Dragons, right? Because I mean, that also is essentially different role playing, storytelling, but also outside of your two main genres.
Yeah, absolutely. And it has that, I really enjoy that like collaborative storytelling element because I not only play Dungeons and Dragons, but I watch Critical Role for anyone who's in the D&D space. It's a streamed tabletop game with voice actors playing these characters. And it's kind of a strange, like if a D&D session and a book and a movie had a baby, it's like all of these things. And I love it because it just totally captures my attention and it takes me out of what I'm writing, which is, very important. And I can't edit it because it's just people speaking. So I really enjoy that.
Has that sparked an interest in you also branching off into fantasy or paranormal urban fantasy type stories?
I'm not going to say whether or not there's a half-started urban fantasy on my computer as we speak. I am just terrible. I can't stick to one. The fact that I wrote romance novels for 10 years straight before I tried anything else is like legit a miracle because I love all genres and I want to do everything. I want to write everything. So yeah, it was bound to happen at some point that I would try something different. So I'm definitely not opposed to trying some fantasy or urban fantasy at some point.
Because I heard you were also a huge zombie fan.
Yes. Love some post-apocalyptic fiction as well.
So with that, and maybe this kind of is a springboard into our next section of fresh fiction facts, which are like quick questions off the top of your head. But what is your favorite zombie storyline? Are you a Walking Dead fan, World War Z,
Ooh.
Resident Evil, the
Yes.
fast or the slows,
Resident Evil 100%. I got the third game in that series on my PlayStation when I was 16 years old, and I've been hooked ever since. My sister and I used to play it together. I would control, and she would sit there with a pillow because she was too chicken to look at it the whole time. And my husband and I play it now. He's a gamer as well. So yeah, Resident Evil is definitely up there. I also started reading a series by Mira Grant, which I think is quite old now. It might be from like 2012, called Feed, which is a futuristic post-apocalyptic zombie series that's about kind of like a new wave of media, and it's really fantastic. So definitely recommend that as well.
And with those, I mean, participating with it as a game, and a lot of these have books or else they've been made into
Mhm.
movies.
Yes.
And you were talking about also with the Dungeons. I mean, is there a medium that you find is better for all of these types of stories, or
Hmm.
does it deliver the same type of oomph for you, I guess?
No, they all kind of give something different. And I think at heart, I will always be a book person. Um, that's just like, I think is always going to be my medium of choice before anything else. And I am a real like paperback, like a tactile reader as well. I have done audiobooks in the past, but I find that my lifestyle doesn't really lend because I don't commute or anything. So it doesn't really lend itself to audiobooks as much. But yeah, I love books, but I also enjoy things like video games and movies for the ability to more readily share it with someone else. I like that because then it's someone, that you can kind of discuss things together. So I enjoy that for a shareable medium because my husband is not really a fiction reader. And so that's a way that he really gets invested in stories, and he's actually got a real nose for story. He helps me plot a lot of my books. And yet he doesn't read any fiction. So those mediums are definitely valid as far as storytelling goes, for sure.
Okay, I'm curious on that. So how does that work then if he's helping you plot? I mean, is it just that you guys are talking it out as opposed to giving him pages, or?
Yeah, so he's never actually read anything that I've written. And at this point, I think I'm up to like book 35 or 36. So, and some people are like, oh, aren't you upset? And I'm like, no, it's not his thing, but he is phenomenal for plot problems. And I will sometimes say to him, hey, I need to work through a plot issue. Can we go for a walk? We have a big park near our house. And we will take off and go for a walk around the park. And I will be like, so this is happening and this thing, what do you think I should do? And he'll be like, oh, you could do this and do this. And he has all these ideas. And like, sometimes I'm like, yeah, I could never write that in this genre. It wouldn't work. But he will always have some nugget of some idea that just like makes my brain go, yes, that's correct. And then I go off in a direction from there. So yeah, he's heavily involved in every book, even though he hasn't read them.
Okay, so I'm super curious. What is one of those nuggets that he gave where you're like, oh, there's no way I could put that into this type of romance genre? Just never.
God, I can't even think of one off the top of it's all often to do with like stuff that I think, when I was plotting my cozy mystery, he started going down like a serial killer route. And I'm like, that doesn't really work in the genre. Like that's not, he kind of, I don't think, understood like the difference between a cozy mystery and like a standard kind of mystery.
It's not that kind of murder,
No. No, it's a little too it's a little much for a cozy.
Well, what is something that immediately takes you out of a story, either while you're writing or while you're reading or watching something?
Ooh. I struggle with a character who like can't see past their own viewpoint. So when a character is very much about like everything that they're doing, they think that that's like the be all. I mean, I guess I could probably apply that to people as well. But, it's just something that I struggle with a little bit, is like a character that feels very insular and doesn't, at least make an attempt to kind of see things from other points of view, doesn't have an expanded worldview. That kind of bugs me a little bit, regardless of what medium it's on.
Okay, I'm going to throw some easy ones at you for the fresh fiction facts, okay? Who would you most want to be stuck in an elevator with?
My husband, because I feel like he would know what to do.
What is your favorite writing fuel? What keeps you going?
Oh, coffee for sure.
Okay. What is your favorite distraction when you're avoiding writing?
Probably watching Critical Role, Dungeons and Dragons, or playing Magic the Gathering, because yes, I am that much of a nerd.
Who would be your dream writer collaboration?
Oh, I think you just shorted my brain. Oh, Sally Hepworth. She's an Australian domestic suspense writer, and I think she's fabulous.
What childish thing do you still do as an adult?
On Christmas Day, I eat chocolate for breakfast.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No, there's not. I think it's perfectly fine as an adult. I make that choice for myself.
Definitely. Well, and growing up, whenever I would stay the night with my grandmother, she was from Holland, and she would serve us what was like basically plain white bread with butter and then chocolate sprinkles on it.
Yeah, we do that in Australia, and we call it fairy bread.
I mean, standard breakfast. And I tell people that now, and they're just like, wow.
Don't knock it till you try it. It's delicious.
Right? So like I said, I'm all in for the chocolate for breakfast. No judgment here.
Mhm.
What is the most terrible movie that you legitimately enjoy?
Oh, that's a good question. Oh, I have a thing for like really super bad, like C-grade horror movies. And I watched Piranha when I was home in Australia with my dad, and it was really
The
bad. And I
original
loved
one?
it. Sorry?
The original one from like the early 80s?
Oh, no, this one was from, I reckon it was about like 2003, 2004. So it definitely, and it was set during like spring break
Of
in the
course.
US. And it was just, it had Jerry O'Connell and it was terrible and I loved it.
What's your favorite one-hit wonder?
Ooh, these are tough questions. I don't know. I couldn't tell you one off the top of my head.
Okay. How about other than books? What is something that you own a ridiculous amount of?
Oh, makeup items, lipsticks in particular, too many, and perfume bottles.
Oh gosh. Okay, you've been kidnapped, but 2 hours later, they've returned you because you can't stop talking about what?
Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay. Um, Now somebody earlier was talking during the name game a little bit about this, but if you were going to start one, what
Mhm.
kind of cult would you start?
Ooh, probably a cult that worshipped really good food. I don't know. That would be a great cult. I would join that.
Oh, that yeah, that would be interesting. Yep.
Yeah.
What is your most dog-eared reread book? The one you keep going back to?
Controversial. I don't reread books.
Really? Never.
Yeah. There are very few. I think the only book I've read probably more than twice would be The Road by Cormac McCarthy.
Ooh, dark.
Dark. Yeah, I know. I know. I look very like light and happy and I love dark stuff. Yeah. I don't reread a lot of books because I think the thrill for me is in not knowing what happens. It's probably why I don't plot my own books.
Okay, if you could see one and know that it's real, would you want to see a ghost or an alien?
A ghost. I feel like being spectral, they're like less of a threat than aliens.
Okay. If you came with a warning label, what would it say?
Must be caffeinated or do not come near.
See, that one does not seem to be a surprise after our conversation. No.
No, I actually have a sweatshirt that has a skeleton on the front that says dead inside, but caffeinated. I know it's such a writer cliche, but it's, I'm from Melbourne. It's like the land of great coffee. I have to be addicted.
Hey, of course, right? Okay, what are three things that every hitman needs? Since you are writing cozies now.
A plan of attack, a backup weapon, and a disguise that they can put on while running.
Okay. Okay, here's another off the wall one. If you suddenly had to hide a giraffe from the authorities,
Oh gosh.
what would you do? And I want you to answer that for both where you're at now in Toronto and how would you do it in Australia?
That is a really good question. In Toronto, I would put the giraffe in a Toronto Raptors like mascot outfit and just make out like it's a really big inflatable mascot. In Australia, I would put a sign over there that said free beers and no one would look at the giraffe.
Okay, I can go with that. What would you consider to be your ideal paradise?
A house on a lake with a really big library and a really great coffee machine and lots of big comfy couches and cozy blankets and board games and my husband.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, I'd love to have a cottage.
Now, I also understand that you're a big traveler. So,
Yes.
where is somewhere that you still want to go?
Oh, I really am desperate to go to Italy because my dad is Italian and I have never been to the motherland, which disappoints him greatly. But I also really want to do the Nordic, sort of like Finland, Sweden, Norway, being like such a knitter and like I love the cold. I just have a real affinity. Like I kind of know, a kindred spirit to that place. So that would definitely be two places I'd love to go. And Japan. There's too many places.
You're hitting just a wide variety. That's okay.
I want to go everywhere.
Well, the Confessions of a Canine Drama Queen just came out as number 3 in the Paws in the City, but we always want to know what's next. Can you give us any hints? What should we anticipate?
Yeah, so I am hard at work on my Emily George Cozy Mystery series at the moment. The second book for that comes out in February. It's called A High Tide Murder, and it takes place during a surfing competition because the books are set on the California coast. So surfing competition comes to town and there's a dead body in a hotel room. So I'm hard at work on that. And then I'm actually also working on a proposal for another thriller for my publisher that's publishing my thrillers under my SJ Short pen name. So I'm actually deep in the mystery zone at the moment.
I didn't dig up that pen name.
It was only announced this week, so that's a new one.
Brand new. Okay.
Yeah.
So a darker thriller line then.
Yeah, female centric, and all set in Australia as well, which is something I have had some trouble with in my career, is trying to sell my Australian books. So yeah, we found a publisher that really likes it. The books are all set in my hometown of Melbourne, so I'm working on the second one in that kind of contract.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So with all of that, where then is the best place for our readers and listeners to keep in touch with you and find out the details of exactly when those books come out?
Yeah, probably my socials is the best place to find me. And on Instagram, I am Aussie Gal Writes. And all of my stuff is under the one handle because ain't nobody got time for 3 social media accounts. So Aussie Gal Writes on Instagram. And then each of my pen names do have a separate Facebook page and website. But Stefanie-London.com is probably the best place to go, like centrally, for those 3 things.
Fantastic. Well, Stefanie, stick around for our after hours happy hour with our readers where they can ask you some questions directly. But let me thank you again for joining us. It's always a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you so much for having me. This was super fun. I can't wait to chat to the readers now.
Awesome.